All right, three, two, one. Welcome, everybody. This is a brand new video series about all kinds of wonderful things. We've got so much in store for you today. Basically, what this video series is daily intelligence brief. And I'm saying daily tongue in cheek because there's going to be days where I just can't do this one just because of business and things like that, personal things, all that stuff. But we're going to try and do once every day or so, just keep you updated on certain things that are going on in various different aspects of life. By the way, my name's John White. I work for the Live in Carolina team at Realty One Group Coastal. You may know Mark Klim and Jeff Gregg from their channel. They produce wonderful YouTube videos about relocating to Charleston and the Summerville area specifically. What I'm here to do is just give you some deep dive in the data that's going on with regards to real estate, national, but more focused on Charleston because that's where I am. Tech stocks, because I enjoy that. Also, news and other happenings that are going on throughout the world, and faith aspect of that. And then also, because I'm such a nerd, we're going to throw in gaming and anime stuff just for fun, just to tell you what's going on in the news. So hopefully you can use this if you're a nerd like me that's in real estate, that likes to hear about where your money's going and what's happening in your community and what your favorite show is going to be doing. You want to stick around for this. So we're going to pay attention to a few things today. This is Monday, August 24th, 2026. And one thing that we're going to pay a lot of attention to today is the Summerville land use workshop that's happening right now. At least I think it is still happening now. They have not published the minutes from it. That is forthcoming, but I'm going to give you the details, and tomorrow or the next day we'll go ahead and dissect it a little bit more in depth. Basically, this is where the town is going to be discussing the rules of what gets built, where it gets built, and how much growth existing infrastructure is expected to absorb. So essentially, town council's special land use workshop, it started at 9 o'clock this morning. It was supposed to go to 1 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock now, and they still haven't published the minutes. But I got to get a video out, so we'll dissect that tomorrow. But here's what it's about. It's basically tied to the town's 5-year comprehensive plan review. And this is for the Greater Summerville Dorchester County Chamber of Commerce. The draft goals already show the direction of the conversation. Essentially, Summerville wants development more closely aligned with existing infrastructure capacity, while encouraging a broader mixture of housing types and steering housing toward areas with access to schools and community facilities. The town also notes that recent zoning changes already allow more flexibility for smaller lots and accessory dwelling units in some areas. Now, I've said this for a few years ago. Summerville is divided into two counties. You have Dorchester County, which this is what this is talking about. And then you have Berkeley County. And Berkeley County, over the past few years, has been much more progressive and much more proactive when it comes to infrastructure development. Dorchester County has not. And there's reason for that. And I tend to simplify it. It's more complex than this. But I like to tell people it's basically because Dorchester County has a bunch of good old boys on council that don't want things to change. You'll see in a little bit some of that going on. The problem is changes here. Quote from Lord of the Rings, where Aragorn goes to, oh gosh, I can't think of his name, the Rohan king. Anyway, he goes to him and he says, and the king says to Aragorn, and says, basically, we're not seeking open wars upon you, whether you want it or not. And that's the thing with Summerville, is that the building is here. The people are coming. You can't stop them. And they've been coming for years. Some would say about 5 years, when the big COVID boom hit and everyone decided to relocate and work remotely, leave Manhattan and Long Island and move to Summerville. There is some of that, but it is more complex than that. So I want to give it credit to where credit goes. There are county council members who actually do a good job, but there are some that are stuck in their ways. And as more people come in, essentially, if they don't, they're going to get voted out because the population infrastructure is going to change. Excuse me. So we talk a lot about density, traffic, affordability, annexation, and redevelopment. A comprehensive plan doesn't approve tomorrow's subdivision, but it establishes a philosophy planners use when the subdivision eventually shows up. A lot of people only notice growth when bulldozers start knocking down trees. The decisions shaping it often happens years earlier in documents like this plan. So regardless of what happens today, you seeing construction going on in these areas and houses springing up out of the ground. It's going to be a few years before that even begins, but the process has to get started. So this matters because a comprehensive plan influences where the town encourages housing, density and infrastructure investment, commercial investment, all that, long before anything gets built. Now, what we do know at this time, again, it's a little after 2 o'clock, is that they're examining whether the town's 2020 growth assumptions still make sense, given what has actually happened since then. And again, the broader review covers land use, housing, transportation, infrastructure, economic development, natural resources, other long-range priorities and projects, with officials specifically describing the challenge as balancing growth with Summerville's existing character. So there is a slightly more interesting subplot to this. 115 South Magnolia Street is a historic Southern Inn. There is a proposed rezoning that becomes something of a test case for how seriously the council follows the existing future land use map. Opponents argue that changing the property from GR2 residential to neighborhood mixed use conflicts with that comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has repeatedly opposed this rezoning, and the controversy was one of the reasons why the council wanted a broader land use discussion. So the question becomes, is Summerville going to change its future land use map to reflect the increasingly mixed use reality around the downtown area, or use the existing map to protect remaining residential pockets? And this has implications way beyond one bed and breakfast on Magnolia. If the map changes, it can make future rezonings easier to justify. If council reinforces the existing neighborhood residential designations, that signals a more protective stance towards established neighborhoods. Again, it's not proactive towards the growth that is already upon us. But we don't have the final from that. I'll dissect it more tomorrow. So I want to get into some other things too, as well. And I really hope that that's informational for you. I know that moving to Summerville, especially if you're considering Summerville or you already live in Summerville, some of this stuff you don't really hear about unless you look for it. And then all of a sudden you say, why are they building a roundabout on Lincolnville Road? Why are they building a roundabout and overpass on Ladson and Dorchester? I don't think that started yet. I haven't driven it, but that's the thing. Why is there a whole new 5,000 plus residents community being added to Cane Bay? Big deal. If you haven't heard that one, I'd be a little bit surprised if you're researching Summerville as a place to live or if you live here already. And we'll talk about that one on another episode. But these things are happening, right? And like I said, and Cane Bay's in Berkeley County. So they're pretty much set up to handle it. But like I said, Dorchester County, you have this council that doesn't want to change that. And yet change is coming. So we'll come back to this on another episode. But I just wanted to emphasize, watch what's going on with the city plan. And if you already live here, make your opinion known. Let the council members know, hey, I don't like what you're doing. Or I do like what you do, because you're the one who's going to vote for them. And even if you don't live here, if you're thinking of moving to Summerville, first off, call me, because I am a realtor and I would love to sell you a house. But seriously, give these people a call and say, hey, I'm thinking about moving there. I'm bringing my vote. And then when the elections come around, go vote. I'm surprised at the number of people that don't vote in the local elections. National elections come around and everybody talks about the presidential elections or Senate seats, all this. And that's a story right there with Lindsey Graham's sister taking over his seat. We'll talk about that on another episode, because that's a big can of worms that we want to dive into at some point. But you have these big election cycles and everybody knows about that. But your vote is far more impact in your local community. Your vote based on who's running, what their policies are, what you want your children to be taught, where is this money going to be very important. Every election cycle, you should be at the polling station. And if it comes down to you don't like who's running, it's like my dad always said, is that if you don't like who's running, if you don't vote for the other guy, you're basically voting for the guy that you don't like. You may as well vote for the lesser of two evils on these things. But your vote is so important, and so many politicians are out there relying on the fact that you're not going to get off your butt and go vote. So vote, especially in the local elections. And this is why you need to do this. Okay? That's just for preaching here. Some of you, I'm preaching to the crowd, but I just want to make that clear. All right, let's talk about stock and tech stocks right now. So today, as of this morning, stock futures were lower. NASDAQ futures, and I'm reading my notes here because I want to make sure I'm giving you the right, but NASDAQ futures were down about 0.6%. We have a combination on Wednesday coming up of NVIDIA earnings, inflation data, Jackson Hole, elevated treasury yield, and new Iran sanctions. The 10-year treasury is about 4.72% right now, while the 30-year remains at a 19-year high. So NVIDIA, that's really important because the markets are using that as a scoreboard. All the other AI companies that are out there, and whether the spending is accelerating fast enough to justify current valuations. Sounds like how my English teacher in high school used to say wash because she was from Minnesota or something, but she would say wash, go wash your hands. It was like, what? Anyway, Kevin Warsh makes a closely watched Jackson Hole policy appearance later this week. So why does that matter? NVIDIA could report an excellent quarter and still fall if investors expected something better, right? As my father-in-law said, up on expectations, down on news, right? That's the thing. And I lean on him a lot for stock. This is the guy who in the 1980s bought in heavily to two no-name IPOs called Apple and Microsoft. Oh boy, did he pick it. So, trust these things. But losing long-term rates remains bad news for growth stock valuations and on the real estate side, mortgage affordability. So, just some things to on Wednesday, just watch these things. Gross margin, AI data center demand guidance, hyperscaler spending, is it accelerating? And how the 10-year treasury reacts afterwards. Okay. The stock market doesn't grade companies on whether they did well. It grades them against what investors already priced in. So you can have a great company and overpriced expectations at the same time. So now, speaking of AI, and this goes into my third point here. Let's talk a little bit about Google. There's some interesting stuff going on. Google rolled out an embeddable preferred sources bot. And what that does is it lets readers tell Google that they want to see more content from a particular publisher across search, discover, and Google News. That's already been there, but it's a lot more clunky than what it's going to be now. It follows Google's expansion of preferred sources into AI mode and AI overviews. So that sounds like it's just some publisher feature, right? But Reuters found that the publishers expect traditional search traffic decline roughly over 43% over the next 3 years, while they're simultaneously prioritizing YouTube, TikTok, creator style content, and visibility inside AI platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all that. So what does that mean? That sounded like a lot of tech speak to basically say this. And this is really important if you're a small business or you're in charge of your social media for your business or your platforms or your content creator. The traditional search engine isn't going away, but it is getting diminished. People are going less and less to Google and saying, how do I fix a faucet? Or how do I cook a good traditional Japanese ramen or something like that? Nowadays, people are going to YouTube, which our team thrives on YouTube. We have so many people coming in through YouTube and our YouTube channel, and I'll share the link below. And you really should watch it. Mark and Jeff are hilarious, but that's part of the reason why people come. It's because they're very personable. And the truth is that what you see on YouTube with Mark and Jeff, that's how they really are. They're really fun, happy, goofy guys who love helping people relocate to Charleston. And I am too. I'm just a little more database, I guess. A little drier, different audience. It's okay. But what you're seeing is, and that transition started a couple of years ago. Google was dominant, but YouTube came up. And then we see the launch of more short form video content, TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, that. And people will now go there looking for these things. What's the best place to move to in Charleston, South Carolina? They're not typing that into Google. They're typing it into YouTube. They're typing it into TikTok and Instagram. But most important, they're typing it into ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity and all these other channels that are out there. And so the future isn't CEO dies and AI replaces everything, but it looks a lot more like Google plus YouTube plus AI plus social media shorts, short form videos, plus direct audience relationships. They all just overlap. Instead of saying Google is this and they're not separating. They're becoming enmeshed. Like, I don't know if you ever had a grandma who crocheted or something like that, but all these strands coming together and they work together to build this resource. So, what does that mean to you? Especially if you're a small business owner or someone who is involved in social media marketing and advertising in your company. What it means is going to be that you are going to have to be more broad in what you're doing. So, and especially for the small business person, and it actually favors the small business person in a way, believe it or not, at least theoretically, it does, right? I can't guarantee that. But it favors a person who becomes a recognizable local source, not somebody cranking out 400 interchangeable keyword articles that are jam packed with hashtags and things like that. So, your strategy, depending on what it is, I'm just going to take it from my point of view. It's a self employed realtor in the greater Charleston, Summerville area. What it looks like is you go find the specific local question that people are asking specifically. And there are many ways to do it. You can just start typing into Google and say, hey, what's the best place in Charleston to, and let it fill itself out. And you'll see what people are asking. But there's also sites out there that will show you what the top search terms are, right? You create an authoritative answer page, a video, a short, repeat updates on the same subject. And I got a text there, I apologize. So pick some subjects you want to own informationally and update them repeatedly. And at the end of the day, why this is this weird news, but it's good news, is that Google is quietly saying AI search still needs actual human beings that are living and breathing, people that you trust. It's actually beginning to give users more ways to tell it what sources they actually want to hear from, even inside the AI powered search like Gemini. So the goal isn't publishing the most content, it's becoming the source somebody wants Google or AI to keep bringing back up. All right, a little break here. This would be where I'd say if I have a Patreon page or something like that, this is where you want to go, but I don't know. Anyway, next thing I want to talk about some stuff that it's faith related. And by the way, full disclosure here, I'm a Protestant Christian. That is my worldview. If you don't agree with that worldview, that's totally okay. We all have opinions. And I think we can all learn from each other in that. So I don't say what I'm about to say to offend anybody. I'm just saying it from the lens from which I'm seeing it. Okay. So let's talk about the Iran escalation a bit. And we could talk about a whole bunch of things because there's a lot that's been going on. And it ties down to real estate in a lot of ways, especially in my world, because transportation costs are spiking, things like that. We have Joint Base, it used to be Joint Base Charleston, it's now Joint Base Lindsey Graham. And there's a lot of families that are impacted by this conflict, right? So today, Pakistan's army chief is in Tehran. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I'm trying to enunciate better. But Pakistan's army chief is in Tehran, and he's attempting mediation just as the United States prepares what the Treasury Secretary has described as a massive new financial offensive against Iran and countries helping it trade. Iran, in the meantime, has threatened to halt Gulf oil exports, restrict unauthorized traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. China has criticized these sanctions and says it will defend its interests. This is a meaningful shift from just will the ceasefire hold, right? Now it appears Washington wants to produce enough economic pressure, strong enough to force Iran back towards the negotiating table without needing a larger military escalation, which makes sense because when you run out of bombs, you got to use something else, right? Whether that works is another question entirely. So, and there's all that, and we could dive into that, but I want to pull an interesting faith counter. And again, I'm Protestant, but I'm going to pull this from Pope Leo's Sunday message. And this is a summary of what he said basically is he warned against retreating into our own convictions and emphasized that Christian faith begins with an actual relationship with Christ rather than merely having the right answers about him. So why does that matter? I said, maybe I'll call this why it matters. That's a good idea. So why this matters. Economically speaking, sanctions on Iran will affect oil, inflation, treasury yields, and eventually mortgage rates. But this faith piece lands somewhere different and interesting. It's to be extremely certain about politics, theology, really anything, and still let certainty substitute for encounter, humility, and discipleship. That's a tougher question than who won the argument. There's a difference between having convictions about Jesus and actually knowing Jesus. Pope made this distinction. Faith can't just become a bunker full of correct opinions. Conviction does matter, but true Christianity is ultimately a relationship, and that relationship should change how we treat people, especially people who are not like us, right? People who believe different things, people who practice different things, people who look different, talk different, eat different, dress different. So finally, I'd like to finish with that, but I've got to throw in something nerdy. That was heavy. I want to leave you with something light. And if you're a gamer, anime watcher like me, I've been just a thing. I don't know if you remember this. If you're a Gen Xer, there was a show back in the 70s called Gatchaman, which was translated to Battle of the Planets or G-Force here in the United States. And that was in 1978 or 9 or something like that. And ever since then, I've been hooked. So horribly dubbed, by the way. Had Casey Kasem as one of the lead actors, and you felt like he was going to attack the bad guys and then count down the weekly top 40 at the same time. But I digress. Let's talk about Gamescom. This starts tomorrow, and it is enormous. Okay, tomorrow, August 25th, followed by the Cologne show, August 26th through 30th. This has more than 1,600 exhibitors from 7 countries and has sold out. It's an enormous venue foot. The announced showcase already includes the third Final Fantasy VII Revelation, Gears of War E-Day, New Witcher material, Forza Horizon 6, and many other releases, with Sega among the participating publishers. Now, me, like JRPGs, that's one of my things. And the one thing I'm excited about is Persona 4 Revival. And they're actually going to have hands-on impressions of the game there, and changes dungeon flow, combat, pacing, and other things. Obviously, we're looking forward to the graphics updates and the sound updates. That they use different actors, voice actors for this, but that's okay. Persona 3 Reload was amazing. Actually, I hate to say this, I like the voice actors better. But tomorrow, through the weekend, right, this is going to be plenty of announcements, and we're not going to stick to rumor garbage or anything like that. We can judge the actual reveals as they come. So with Gamescom starting tomorrow, my big rule is for any of these games, please don't stop telling me it looks beautiful. We're in 2026. It better look beautiful. It has to. Otherwise, it will totally flop. Tell me whether the dungeons are better. Tell me whether the combat flows like a modern Persona game, and whether Atlas actually fixed some of the parts that aged and a little cringy, because there is some of that in there. Remake has to do more than just increase the polygon count. And that's it for today. We went over a lot of stuff. And like I said, I want to try and do this more often, and I'm just looking at my calendar. I know I should be able tomorrow should be able to hit. Wednesday, Thursday might be hard. Friday's impossible, but that's okay. We'll get out some of this information and we'll dissect this into shorts and throw it out there so that you can get the information you want. I know this was a lot, but we make sure that I cover everything I want to cover here. Okay, so that's it for today. This was about 37 minutes long. I look forward to seeing you soon, and until next time, stay safe, everybody. Bye bye.